Good afternoon and good morning if you're watching from Europe. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director here at 3P Innovation. I've got with me my colleague Ben Smith today. We're just waiting just for allow a few more people to join. So while we give people just enough time to get their their webinar started, I'll give you a bit of a talk through what we're going to do today. So obviously the main objective of today is to show you our R500 robotic capsule filler. We'll be running a live demonstration of it later on. Before that, Ben's going to take us through the mechanics of the system, show us essentially how it all works and how it fits together. We have a presentation from another colleague of ours, Tom French, who's going to talk to us about the filter weight technology. This is proprietary technology for 3P Innovation, and it's a powdered dosing technology that's really key to this machine and why it can really handle pretty much any powder that you're going to come across in your sectors. After that, we'll then run the demonstrations. We're going to run two recipes today. We're going to run a 90 milligram capsule, and we're also going to run a 10 milligram capsule. So we've got two quite extremes there. It really gets an idea of how the machine performs, how it works, and you'll also see a lot of what Tom talks about live in action. On that point, we are live, so if there's a couple of slip-ups, we apologise, we can't stop and go back, but we'll do our best to make sure that we get it all good on the first go in one take. So I'm just going to check with my producer now. How are we doing on numbers, Sailor? How are we on numbers? Okay, right. So we'll make a start. So we've got Lauren on the camera. So hopefully we'll get you a nice steady picture. So I'll give you an introduction to the machine first. So this is the R500 robotic capsule filler. It's really geared towards DPI, so dry powder inhaler products, where you're dosing powder direct into capsules. Often for a DPI product, they're very light, they flow very difficult, very poorly. So often it's not very easy to dose gravimetrically into a capsule. You need to dose gravimetrically because you need to weigh all your capsules, so you can be stuck for a technology. So this is a real good solution for that application. Similarly, if you're doing any type of pre-formulation work where you're dosing pure API, early stage clinical trial, again, this is the type of solution you can use because you can dose 4, 6, 10 capsules at a time at whatever milligram that you want. So it's ideal for pre-formulation work. The unit itself is about 1 meter squared in footprint. Key feature of this is that's it. There is no separate control panel or electrical cabinet. It's all housed within this 1 meter square footprint. So it's a real advantage for us because it saves a lot of space, and space is obviously at a premium, particularly if you're doing any lab work. I'm going to hand over to Ben, who'll give you a once around the machine and talk around some of the options that are currently on this machine.
Thank you very much, David. So, as David mentioned before, this machine sits in a one-by electrical cabinet underneath the machine, and that's what helps us keep the total space required for this machine down. On the top, this machine is fitted with a containment option. Within this containment option, we're able to offer negative pressure control, RH control, temperature control, and then different levels of filtration for your air to meet your containment requirements. As part of this isolator, we have glass doors on the 3 sides. These allow good visibility, and then these combined with the inflatable seals and the glove ports on the door allow the operator to interact with the machine, whether it be for cleaning, chopping up powder or capsules on those longer runs. The second doors on the outside of the machine are there for safety, so you can't access the glove ports, and these have got a individually magnetically coded interlock on them. So if you open those outer doors, the robot power is rendered safe. Today, we've overridden that just so we can run with the doors open, so you guys are able to see. We don't have two glove ports for easy access in the way of the camera shot. But normally this machine would not run with this door open. If you'd like to come in, you can have a look inside the machine. On the left-hand side here, we have our capsule filler. This starts off with the bulk hopper at the top. The bulk hopper is then fed into a singulated magazine. The magazine then drops down into an orientation block. In the orientation block, the horizontal and the vertical finger allow the capsule to be orientated and presented body first. The robot tool will move over into the capsule feeder. The lower vacuum post moves up, and through the use of vacuum, in the body tool, in the robot tool, and the body of the capsule taken into the titanium weighing chalice. This allows it then to be moved round and placed onto the weigh cell. I have mentioned the robot arm, but the robot arm is attached to a Staubli SteriClean robot. This allows us flexibility in being able to handle capsules, and then with an arm change devices if that is what you require. On the back of the isolator wall, we have expansion ports. So in the future, if a device is required, we have the possibility for upgrading to handling devices as they arise as well. The robot arm then takes this separated capsule over to filter weight on this side of the machine. At the very bottom of filter weight, we have a Whippertech weigh cell, which the robot places the titanium chalice onto. The Whippertech weigh cell offers us in this machine, giving us the ability to change total weights that are required and changing that weight range, and also changing the accuracy and the precision of the weigh cell. With the weighing chalice on the weigh cell, filter weight moves down to a filling position, and filter weight goes about the filling action. Tom will cover some of this in a moment. As we can see here, we have a stainless steel filling head. This is removable, and this is the product contact parts. All product contact parts on this machine are stainless steel, PEEK, or certificated silicon. Filling head is easily removable to change between compounds if that is what you require. Here you can see a through beam sensor, and this monitors the powder level within the powder hopper. So when this starts to drop, bulk powder feeder. The bulk powder feeder is the lower section here, and it's topped with a tri-clamp. This means it can be expanded in any way you wish, whether that is a section of stainless steel tube, a bottle, or a charge bag, which can be hung from the top of the machine. The bag can hang from here and be connected onto this bottle. After the capsule has been filled, we then come over to the recombination station where the capsule is recombined. If you're using a different brand of capsule and you have a different set length, an offset for the close can be changed on the HMI to allow for any changes in that. This machine is equipped with a height sensor to measure the length of the capsule. So the capsule will come over to the length check system. This is a good way of detecting presence of a cap before putting a capsule closed the right amount. If the capsule passes all of the criteria, the capsule is then blown out of the robot tool with a small jet of air and passed down into our accept system. If there is any reason why it doesn't pass, it is then taken and put out of the reject system. The other benefit, one of the acceptance criteria is from the weigh cell. Using the weigh cell on each filling allows us 100% weight verification on all fills. So you know you'll only have good doses in your accept batch. You can see on this machine we have a number of ionizers positioned around the machine. We have one on our accept column. We have a couple in at our filling station and one over our capsule feeder. We all know different powders can be susceptible to static, and this can be made worse with our lower bulk density. So that is a bit of an overview on the outside of our whole machine. I very briefly mentioned our filter rate, which has won a Queen's Award for Innovation, but I will now pass over to Tom French to talk about it in a little bit more detail.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Tom French. I'm going to talk to you a bit about why you might need powder filling technology, some of the things you're likely to be looking for, a bit about challenging powders, how our filter weight technology works, and the benefits it can offer you and your organisation. So why do you need powder filling technology? Perhaps you're looking to repeatedly fill and test different formulations during early stage development. You work for a CDMO and you want to fill a wide range of powders with very different properties on the same piece of kit. Or you've got a specific product that you're having trouble filling using conventional powder filling technologies. Microdosing API into capsules during preclinical development helps reduce time to first-in-human trials, and in some cases it can reduce the amount of formulation work required to generate test data for your API. Inhalation in particular continues to be a popular drug delivery route due to the numerous advantages it offers. With this comes the challenge of dosing powders formulated for inhalation. These powders are often susceptible to moisture, which can lead to changes in surface morphology and/or aggregation. Concentration may also not be uniform, which can lead to misleading test results during development. Inhaled powders also tend to have a small particle size and have high surface energy to mass ratio, so they tend to be highly cohesive, leading to poor flow. They also often compact during filling processes, which can lead to variable or poor device performance. Most DPI formulations rely on crystalline small molecule drugs that are micronized to a respirable particle size. To overcome their cohesive nature and lack of flow, these are often mixed with larger carrier particles to make an ordered matrix. The desire to deliver a wider range of molecule types for DPI, such as proteins, peptides and RNAs, all of which cannot be crystallized or micronized, has prompted a large increase in the use of engineered particle technologies such as spray drying. Spray-dried powders present their own processing and handling challenges, and process conditions need to be carefully considered. They are often quite hygroscopic, meaning small amounts of water can cause surface adhesion. As such, they need low RH conditions for filling, sometimes between 10 to 20% RH, with some powders need to be filled as low as 5% RH. This can lead to powders and filling components becoming highly statically charged. They can have a low bulk density, so they occupy a high volume per mass, meaning you end up with large hopper sizes. They also tend to have high surface energies and can be quite cohesive, and can also be fragile and easily fractured and crushed. All of the above can cause issues with conventional volumetric filling processes, which tend to rely on consolidation approaching tap density in order to achieve accurate dosing. This results in the need for a filling technology which is gentle, non-compacting and low shear, which can also cope with both highly cohesive powders where there may be issues with static and also very free-flowing powders. Many filling technologies, such as dosators and augers, require some level of powder compaction in order to generate a consistent density, allowing a fixed volume of powder to be dispensed and therefore achieve repeatable dose weights. This compaction of the powder can have a large impact on both powder and device performance. Especially if early development trials have been performed using hand filling, this can result in measures having to be taken to mitigate the compaction and break up the powder during later stage production. For example, this could be done through secondary processing of the powder and device by providing some form of agitation to disperse the cohesive mass of powder. However, this adds additional complexity and is another process to develop and validate. There's also the option of modifying features on the DPI device you're using in order to provide more energy to fluidize the powder, or even switching to a different device entirely. This can prove to be very expensive depending on how far your project has progressed and also have other knock-on effects. The best option is to select a non-compacting powder filling technology if you can. This is where 3P's filter weight technology comes in. I'm going to talk you through how our technology works, some examples of how its features can be used to dose difficult powders, and the benefits it has to offer. So how does our filter weight technology work? You can see here on the right a simplified cross-section of a filter weight filling head. There's a central dosing pin, some stirrer wires, a silicon hopper, and a nozzle. The dosing pin moves up and down in order to provide a pin opening for powder to flow through. The pin can also rotate with the stirrer wires in order to provide gentle agitation and help get the powder moving. And there's also piezo vibration on the nozzle to provide low amplitude vibration to help get the powder moving as well. All of these control measures can be adjusted in software, so there's no need to make any physical changes to the head. You don't need to change any nozzles. All you need to do is go into the software and change your pin offset, your pin opening, vibration frequency, vibration amplitude. You can set a target cycle time, and also you can adjust the stirring speed. So why are all of these different parameters useful, and how can they be used to overcome any challenging powders you may encounter? Looking at some examples here, say you've got a particularly cohesive powder, such as an API blended with Sorblack 400, what we can do is increase the vibration amplitude and pin offset. Increasing the vibration amplitude can fluidize the powder in the bed and help prevent bridging, and increasing the pin offset prevents any compaction between the pin and the nozzle, which would compact the powder and limit the ability for the powder to travel to the lungs. Say you've got a particularly free-flowing powder that's maybe spray-dried, we can set that pin offset to 0 so that that will completely close and won't allow any overdosing, and you're likely to only need limited vibration there, perhaps even none, so that can be turned off, again all through software. Because it's quite free-flowing, you probably want to slow it down almost in order to get accurate dosing. We can also increase the stirring speed just to make sure if it is coming out of the nozzle quite quickly, there's a consistent head of powder above the nozzle, so you'll get accurate dosing there. We can also use filter weight to dose microspheres, which are typically quite friable. They're easy to crush and break. So what we can do is set the pin offset slightly larger. Say you've got a 0.5 mil diameter microsphere, we can set that to just below that, which tends to then push the microspheres out of the way rather than crushing them. We can have a low stirring speed and low vibration just to really minimize the impact on those microspheres there from the filling technology. An important thing to talk about here is how does filter weight actually dose. So you've got your filling head, which is dispensing powder, and directly underneath that you've got a fast response weigh cell. This allows us to continually measure the fill weight throughout the dose as it's being delivered, and allows the system to very accurately predict when it needs to turn off, so that's close the pin opening and turn off the vibration, to make sure we get very accurate dosing every time, all of which are recorded. So every single dose weight that you are delivering is being recorded and is fed back into the system. You can see here what we can do in order to say if you've got a larger dose that needs to be delivered, we can have an increase in pin opening and a slightly higher vibration for a short amount of time. So this will dispense a large amount of powder in a short amount of time, and then we can close the pin opening down a bit, we can turn the vibration down, so this will slow down the mass flow rate, and we can trickle powder out so that the mass flow rate is lower, so your powder in flight between the nozzle and your device, however small that distance may be, is a smaller amount, making it easier to predict accurately when to turn off the system and get very accurate doses every time. I mentioned as well that the weigh cell data is fed back into the system, so continually over your batch the performance of each dose is measured, and those settings are adjusted throughout your entire batch to increase the filling accuracy over time. So at the start of the batch, if you've got a small amount of variation, if the powder properties are slightly different and those change throughout the batch, the system can pick that up and it can adjust your filling parameters over the course of your batch to make sure that you're always staying on target with your weight every time. So just to recap some of the key features of filter weight and the benefits it offers. So it's gentle handling of the powder, so that's low shear and low compaction. You've got 100% dose verification, so as I mentioned, every dose is weighed and recorded throughout your entire batch. You only need very low quantities of bulk powder to start filling, so depending upon your dose weight, if you've got say a 5 or a 10 milligram dose, you can need as little as 1 gram of powder to fill up your hopper, and you can dose nearly all of that powder from that. So if during early stage development, if you've only got small quantities of powder to use, you don't need very much to get going. You can fill with the small amount you've produced and then get test data from that very quickly. It's very precise, so we can fill down as low as 1 milligram and also up to doses as large as 5 grams if needed. And the dosing accuracy is typically 3% RSD or lower. We get very good results with this system. And dose time varies depending upon your powder and your dose size, obviously, but typical cycle times are between 2 and 5 seconds. Another key benefit of filter weight, which I'll touch on quickly, is scalability. You can see here the same core filter weight technology is used across all of our equipment, from manual and semi-manual benchtop systems through to the R500 and R1000 capsule filling equipment that you'll see here today, and high-speed filling lines for commercial manufacture. This continuity of filling performance and repeatability ensures your product's performance are consistent and repeatable all the way through from preclinical work, phase 1, phase 2, clinical manufacture, all the way through to commercial production. So it's the same filling technology, where nothing's being changed. You'd expect it to work in exactly the same way across all of those. It's probably also worth touching on early stage work. So for this, you'd likely use one of our benchtop systems, and for this, considering containment options is important. So our early stage benchtop systems can be used with any containment systems you may already have, or they can be integrated into a containment system that are typically with our R500 and R1000 systems. So these are fully contained systems capable of running API. And then obviously you've got your commercial scale isolators here with filter weight in, again, suitable of handling for API at high quantities at commercial production speeds. So thank you for listening. I'll now pass you back to David and Ben to show you more of our filter weight technology in action.
I'm going to use Lactahale 300. Now, if you're working in inhalation already,
There's no sound. You're going to have to say that again.
no sound.
No sound.
It works now, so just say that.
Okay, apologies. So I was apologising for the small technical issue, but it seems we had no sound as well. I told you we were live. So We're now going to start the most exciting part of the webinar. We're going to run the demonstration of the machine. We're going to run a 10 milligram capsule and a 90 milligram capsule, and we're going to use lactahale. Those of you who work in DPI products are probably familiar with lactahale 300 and know that it's not a very easy product to use. It's very fluffy, doesn't flow very well, and a lot of other technology that's used doing a gravimetric dose simply can't run with this type of powder. We love it because we get to show our machine running with it. It's what we use during our FATs, and we feel that once we're able to run lactahale through our machine, generally it convinces our customers that this is the right technology for them and can handle a huge variety of different types of powders. For those that aren't familiar, I've got a nice little pot of it here. So if I bring it up to the camera, I'll try and turn it. You can see that it really doesn't want to tumble or flow. I've got to really tip it for it to start flowing. It's really not very nice at all. Very sticky, very poor flow. Not great for filling into capsules using a gravimetric dosing technology. But like I said, we think it's great because our technology works with it. I'm going to hand over to Ben. Ben's going to take us through the HMI, show us all the controls, and then he's going to run. We'll do 90 or 10 first.
Do 10 first, I think.
Okay, 10 milligram first. All right, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Let's bring Lauren in. We'll show you over the HMI first. This machine is a little different to our standard, just for the application it's been used for, but it will give you a good overview of what we have normally. So this is our home screen. Here we have a live weight feedback from our weigh cell, and the weigh cell we have in there has a readability of 0.05 milligrams. Here we have our cumulative weights. This is the total amount of powder that has been dosed through the machine in this run. We have our last dose weight, and we have the last. Over on this side, we have our mode, so we can choose between automatic and manual, and then whether we're inactive or in operation. I have the machine ready to run, so we are currently in an auto operation mode. And down here, we have a graph, and this will show us our fill weights, and we'll come back to these later. We also have our login screen. So this here allows different levels of authorization, user access, passwords, which can automatically time out if you need them to. And we can also integrate this into your company login system. We also then here have some settings, so we can launch file management. We have full event and alarm history, our alarm statuses. We've got machine settings in here. This allows us to set certain parameters. So say for capsules, we can set the separation pressure and that controls the vacuum level for the capsules to allow us to values for our minimum max weight of our capsule bodies, and this allows us to know that we're not dosing if we haven't separated a capsule for any reason. It stops the machine from making a mess of itself. And we also have our accept limits for our capsule lengths. Within filter weight, we have some of these control systems, control loops that Tom talked about, and we can turn these on and off depending on our requirements. We can change the position of our dosing head. This is very useful when we move on to devices. And then we have some of our general settings. So we've got the run time of our machine, the number of capsules, the number of capsule cycles the machine has completed. We can see here, the administrator can set the auto logout time. Pin position is one of our filter weight settings. And we can set our consecutive reject limits for stopping the machine. So the filter weight algorithm is very good at driving between moving itself around to optimize that fill. However, sometimes we as humans know better, and we'll know that it's nice to limit either the amount the pin closes, opens, or the vibration range to encourage that capsule to run. Here we have the machine dashboard. So we have our recipe values from filter weight, which is listed, and then we have our current values. So as filter weight changes these parameters to enable the dose to perform better, we can see this change, and then this will allow us to potentially update our recipe for next time for it to be better optimized. So with the machine already set up, here we can do a job request. So I can select 10 mg Lactahale 300 recipe, tell that to load, set a number of capsules to produce, I can tell it to do 6, and the machine will start dosing. So from here, we see the capsule feeder, feed a capsule into the robot arm. The robot arm takes that over to the weigh cell. That capsule is then being closed, and it's taking it over to the accept reject station. As always, when you're live, it doesn't quite go to plan. The capsules, these were overweight, but then filterweight algorithm has done its job and pulled that, changed the parameters, so it's now doing a dose within our acceptance limit. Only took 3 or 4, and now it's running as we would expect. So from here, we've now finished creating some 10 mg capsules. We can then come over to and we will, from here, to change to our 90 mg recipe, we don't need to change any hardware. We only need to go to, if I find the correct recipe, which is our 90 mg Lactahale 300, we tell that to load. You can see some of the parameters on this left-hand side have changed, and from this we're doing what we call a dual slope fill. So this will put a lot of powder in fairly quickly, and then do the final dosing at a much slower rate, and this allows us some control over that fill. So we can request this job. Oh, sorry. So the machine at this point will go through a clearing cycle. So make sure there's no capsules left in the tool. We do a check weigh of all the chalices so we know what they weigh to start with, so we can tell if there's a body in them when we get to the dosing station. And then from here, we can do a job request. Lauren brings you back to the screen here, we can see our dual slope. So we're doing the vast majority of our dose in this first second. Here you can see we're doing the vast majority of our dose in the first couple of seconds, and then we're doing a very slow increase to make sure we're into that 90 seconds. And the longer we run this, the better that filter rate algorithm gets at doing this in our required time. So you can see there, we've gone from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. So we're tuning into that operating point that we want. And now we've produced all 6 capsules we asked for. It will reject the last couple and just finish off this cycle. It's a slight quirk of this machine and its requirements. Thank you very much, Lauren.
Okay. So we've run the machine with a 10 meg and a 90 meg. Quite like the 90 meg capsule because you get to see the 2-phase dosing, which demonstrates the algorithm working, calculating the time in flight of the powder, and understanding when to stop to make up the required weight. Also, we got to see the algorithm working away, improving the dosing parameters. As Ben pointed out, it started off taking 8 seconds to fill, and after a couple of capsules, it reduced down to 6 seconds. So again, it's showing you that it's constantly monitoring, measuring, and improving its own performance. So once you've kind of found your right parameters, it continues to learn and adjust. It's quite an important feature when you, particularly when you get towards the end of a batch, because the density in your hopper might change, the powder characteristics in your batch might change as you start making more capsules. So it's constantly adapting to the product that's going into the capsule. I think we've probably got some questions, so I'll check with the producer what questions we have, and then we'll also sort of typically get asked from our customers. So I think I'll ask Ben a question, and then I'll go to the screen and see what questions you had from the audience. But Ben, in terms of dosing, we hear a lot of claims around dosing down below 1 milligram. But why don't you share what's the reality of dosing below 1 milligram, and what's actually in reality what is possible?
So we have been doing some work to dose down to about 1 milligram. When you go below this, noise on the waste cell and external influences have a big effect. So we're quite lucky here with the concrete floor on ground level. It's not that thick, and it would be nice if it was thicker because that would give us some more stability. But these sort of parameters, the building infrastructure, the foundations, are really important at that point. I installed one of these machines in Italy. The 3rd floor, very sturdy building, but you can see there when the lift comes up, you can see a 0.1 variation on the waste cell as it goes up and down. So you really have to take those factors into consideration. Waste cells are very good at weighing things, but they also pick up things like the way everything changes in pressure, movement. So you have to be realistic of what your environmental controls give you. And when you want to be doing things at speed, that's when it becomes a little bit trickier. So you have the possibility to weigh down below that, but you have to start thinking about machine output at that point as well.
Yeah, everyone has to stop. The machine has to run exceptionally slowly. You can't have anything else moving. And the other issue you have is, particularly if you're dosing hazardous potent material, you've probably got an isolator in here, and we have so it's got a downflow in there, and even that's enough to create a bit of noise on your waste. So while some people make claims around dosing down to 0.1 milligrams, the reality is it's not practical, and our advice would always be to 1 milligram is really the lowest you're going to get in a practical sense, where it's a viable solution to run your machine using it like that. One of the questions from the audience is, what is the throughput of the machine? This is the R500, so that's 500 capsules per hour. Obviously, it's very dependent on what you're running. So what's the product and what's your recipe and what's your dose size? We saw 2 different capsule sizes one was taking 8 seconds to fill, what was the 10 milligram capsules taking?
That started off around 10 and then it worked itself down a little bit in the middle of the run.
So it very much depends on your recipe. If you've got a very nice product, it flows very well. You'd say 500 an hour. And you're running a 90 mg capsule, it's probably going to be more like 250 an hour. So again, it shows you the variance based on what it is. And then if you want to go higher, we double up or triple up on the filling head. So we can run up to 6 filter weight heads on this machine. At 6, we would replace the robot with a turntable, but up to 2 heads or 3 heads, we would still use a robot, and they're looking at 1,000 an hour or 1,500 an hour. One of the advantages, in fact, that one of the nice things that the machine that Brendan spoke about, the one that's on the 3rd floor, is that's an R1000, so it has 2 heads. The nice thing about that is you can actually dose 2 powders into 1 capsule. So that machine is being potentially adjusted so that you can load 1 capsule on 1 filling head, dose 50 milligrams of 1 type of powder, move it to the next filling head, types of product into a single capsule, which again can be very handy at early formulation stages when you don't want to be doing any blending trials, or if you don't require a homogeneous powder. Another question that we typically ask for, or another feature that's quite interesting, is so we can fill into capsules, we can fill into cartridges and other types of syringes using this machine. We can also fill direct to device. So we've actually got these machines working in the field. They have a secondary isolator connected to it, where we have a mini kind of mandrolic assembly station for an inhalation device. So the inhalation device is loaded and handled by the R500. The powder is filled directly to the inhalation device and goes through a pass-through chamber into the secondary isolator, where it's assembled and then it's unloaded. And that was for a there we go. So again, got a lot of flexibility for this type of machine, particularly within clinical trials. Other typical questions, a lot of it focuses on containment. As Ben mentioned, we have different isolator options. If you don't need any containment, you can just have a standard guard, so you comply with the safety with the robots. People will often say, is it OEB4 or OEB5? Typically, we try and avoid making a bland statement like that, because you have to consider the amount of powder you're using, the actual API, its potency, its OEL level, how often are you doing it, and what are the secondary controls you might have to protect the operator. But typically, we do get pushed for a number, so we'd say this type of setup, you're looking at about highly active, highly potent powders. Come and speak to us, and we can guide you through what precautions and risk management you need to place before you can handle the product. I've got another question. One sec, sorry.
Can it fill micro tablets into a capsule? So that's yes, with an adaptation, yes. It's something that I know one of our other directors has been looking at doing. It's something we've been working on, and yes.
Micro tablets, pellets, granules, as well as powders can all be dosed.
It's something we've been looking at. It might be a slight change to the powder feeder head. It's a movable part here, but yes, you can do a variety of different media through the machine.
I think typically the feedback we get from customers is they really like the capability of the filter weight to handle difficult powders that they just simply cannot run through their other dosing equipment. They like the fact that they can change a lot of the dosing parameters via an HMI rather than having to do tool changes or change anything manually. And finally, the other big advantage is that the footprint. You haven't got a secondary electrical cabinet. It's all housed in this system here, so it takes up very little space. And we set it up for the customers, and they can run it lights out rather than having to stand by the machine, having to constantly kind of touch and taper it to make it work. Any other questions?
One of the things we often get asked there is changing over is removing powder contact parts and changing over capsule sizes. So it'd just be nice to point out that all of the powder contact parts, the hoppers, the heads, are all removable with thumb screws, so you don't need to go in with tools. And then every robot is, again, you can do the capsule size changeover without any tools. So everything is held in with thumb screws, and it can all be removed and changed over very easily.
If you do have any other questions, please feel free to email us or our friends at Inos. And we'll get back to you as fast as we can. Or if you would like to see the webinar again, we will have it recorded and we can share with you. So if you've got some colleagues who'd like to see it, we can arrange that. I'd just like to say thank you to Seema and Vikram at Inos for helping us with today and contacting you all and telling you about our webinar. It's been great to have you, and so thank you for giving us your time. We really appreciate it, and we hope to speak to you again soon.